credentials.
Have a good night. Have a good night.
Okay, so we're gonna get started here. So good evening, everyone. My name is Janai. Thank you for coming here tonight, especially in this weather. So before we get started, I just wanted to let you know that we have a few items available to purchase with 100% of the proceeds going to charities that directly help Palestinians. This has been organized by Palestine Solidarity Sudbury, as well as the Shop World of Flags in Sudbury. So you can make a purchase today by e-transfer or at a later date with the store directly. As for the charities, the first is Middle East Children's Alliance. They provide critical education, healthcare, trauma relief, and humanitarian aid to children and families. And secondly, Gaza Scholarship Initiative, which provides financial support, excuse me, to Gazan students who want to attend college in the US. They assist them in finding scholarships. They help cover expenses such as accommodation, meals, textbooks, registration fees, partial tuition, visa applications, evacuation expenses, air travel, and other logistical needs. So the items available to buy are watermelon pins for 10, flags and keffiyehs for 30 each, and 2 books will be available to order directly from World of Flags. Each book will be 15. So PSS, which is Palestine Solidarity Sudbury, has printed and bound copies of the book, The Thorn and the Carnation, written by Yafet Sinwar. Written during Sinwar's years in Israeli prisons, The Thorn and the Carnation is a personal story of enduring hope in the face of brutal occupation. It blends fact and fiction, chronicling the Palestinian resistance from the aftermath of the 1967 Arab-Israeli War. Secondly available is No Nickel for Genocide, Nickel and the Two World Wars. Sudbury is synonymous with nickel, and nickel is synonymous with war. It has been established that the 2 world wars could not have been fought in the way that they were if nickel had not been discovered in Sudbury. Nickel is still a vital war material and essential to the Israeli Zionists in the genocide that they are carrying out in Palestine and Lebanon. If you're interested in making a purchase for a donation today, come please find me before 9. Or if you're interested in doing that at a later date, contact Palestine Solidarity Sudbury on Facebook. And you can also call or visit World of Flags directly. They're on Elm Street in Sudbury. Their number is 705-688-0881. And we will have their business cards over here at the table for you. We also have lots of free posters and flyers. We would appreciate if you took them to share with your family, your friends, put them up around town. And so now to begin our session, I'd like to introduce William, who will lead our conversation on the BDS movement.
Thank you, Janai, for that introduction. So I'm just going to share my screen now. And all right, does that look good on your folks' end? Is it full screen? Okay, awesome. Cool. So thank you, Janai, for that introduction and for all the stuff that came out there. Like she said, my name is William, and I'll be presenting mostly tonight, but we will have other presenters too. And like I said, I'm going to talk about boycott, divest, sanctions, which is one approach to ending the occupation in Palestine. All right, so there's kind of 2 parts to the story today. There's the BDS movement, which is a specific set of organizations, and then there's just the BDS tactics, boycott, divestment, and sanctions. And to some extent, this will be a story of both. We're going to start with the movement, though. So it's a fairly well-known fact that there's a lot of bodies, like organs of civil society in the West Bank and Gaza, and in all of occupied Palestine, devoted to trade unions, and also legislative structures like the Palestinian Liberation Organization, and its parliament. So in 2005, those organizations all kind of came together and decided on to form the BDS movement as kind of a primary tactic by which they were going to try to push forward the cause of the ending the occupation of Palestine. This was on the anniversary of the first anniversary of a ruling from the International Court of Justice that ruled that a barrier the Israeli government had set up in the West Bank was illegal, which was part of Israeli settlement of the West Bank. All right, I'm going to kind of just get into the meat of it. I'll also show BDS introducing themselves a bit later on. But next, I really wanted to turn to, you could call it the concerned consumer's guide to obeying the boycotts that BDS has arranged. So the BDS movement doesn't boycott all Israeli products. It boycotts a select list of companies that, in some fashion or other, have proven themselves to be particularly bad, either in the sense that they are setting up factories in the West Bank, like SodaStream, which is on this slide, or they're collaborating with the Israeli security state, which is how Hewlett-Packard, HP, got on this list. But there's all sorts of different ways that these organizations haven't, these companies have ended up on the list. But the point is, they've all done something special to be on this list. And the idea behind the boycott is not to boycott every single thing that's coming out of Israel, but to identify particularly good targets for boycotts. Before I sort of move on, Sabra hummus is in most grocery stores. SodaStream, very popular Christmas gift idea. You'll find it in Canadian Tire. So it's something to sort of notice and think about and to avoid. Ahava is a brand of makeup. I think I've seen it in Shoppers Drug Mart and that sort of thing. So think about that when you're trying to avoid it. Puma is obviously a very popular sportswear brand, among other things. And then AXA is an insurance company. I believe that the Canadian operations may have been sold off to some other company other than the primary AXA, but I'm including them in the list just because I think they have some Canadian operations. So I just wanted to, you can find the full list of boycotts on the BDS movement website. But this is the ones that struck me as ones we're likely to find in everyday life. All right. So this is just one point that I wanted to reinforce. So the boycotts are not chosen in order to completely end your complicity with the Israeli state. or all of its economic systems. The point of the boycotts are kind of to get our way, right? So if we boycotted everything that came out of Israel, you would instantly lose track of whether something is a product of Israel, and no individual company would feel the effects of it because of the fact that when you just kind of divide attention over so many different brands, you kind of lose the ability to keep track of it. So I guess the point I'm trying to make right now is that all these boycotts are designed to be targeted, which is one of these infographics that I found on the BDS website that are on this slide. All right. So I think that for those who are already deeply involved in the BDS, in the pro-Palestine movement, a overarching feeling can be something like hopelessness in the face of the task ahead of us, of just governments that do not seem to care and maybe seem like they're going to care less next year than they do this year, which it's probably how you should feel if you're in Canada or the United States. And not that they cared much to begin with, but one of the great things about BDS is it can point to some kinds of success, and so that's what I'd like to highlight here. So BDS Canada, which is a separate organization from the global BDS movement, which is not affiliated with the global BDS movement, I should mention. BDS Canada boycotted Air Canada over an Israeli aerospace firm that they were using for maintenance when they were docked with in Israel, and that aerospace firm, well, you don't have to say much about an aerospace firm to find something terrible it's doing, and so as you can guess, the organization that Air Canada was working with was bad and doing terrible things, and perhaps due to the boycotts, that contract with that aerospace firm was ended early. And that was a few years ago. Since the genocide started, BDS, or a lot of BDS affiliate organizations, launched a boycott of McDonald's. This is after McDonald's Israel started offering free meals to IDF soldiers. So, the people who were perpetrating the genocide. And sort of the good fortune is that really, really backfired on the global McDonald's brand. And their sales dropped all across the world. Like the total sales of McDonald's dropped across the world, and particularly, obviously, in the Middle East, because McDonald's operates everywhere in the Middle East. And this did prompt some action from the global McDonald's brand. They purchased McDonald's Israel back so that they would own it and that they could put a stop to the local affiliates' actions of supporting the IDF. I have a few more examples on this slide of just brands that have had some kind of affiliation with the Israeli state that were boycotted by or at least lobbied with by BDS groups, and then subsequently changed their behavior. Ben and Jerry's, I believe, shut down factories in the West Bank. Hydro-Quebec ended a contract with Israel Electric because Israel Electric supplies electricity to settlements in the West Bank and probably Gaza in the near future. The Toronto Raptors were going to do like a victory lap after they won that basketball championship like a decade ago, and they were they were dissuaded from taking their victory lap into Israel by the BDS movement. G4S is a major security firm that I do not remember exactly the nature of their involvement in the Israeli state. I'm sure it was something terrible, but it was cut short by the boycott movement. All right, so that's successful boycotts for you. And actually, before I move on to divest, I am just going to stop sharing and let Joanna come to the front and discuss some better businesses to support in the meantime. Joanna, you have the floor, and throw the mic because it doesn't have a very wide range. The mic.
Great. So this way I can share my screen. So I just have a couple of, I know this sounds going to be a bit weird for this for a sec, but so boycotting is one thing, and that's a very important part, but also we can decide to put our money in places that would be beneficial, not just not spending our money in harmful places, but also actually spending our money in places that can use that money for some good. So Handmade Palestine is a fair trade organization that, sorry, there we go. So it supports women artisans in Palestine, and they have, there we go. They have a lot of very interesting products available through them, and the proceeds go to people in Palestine. And they have if you click on the menu here, there is gift sets, and they have an ethical gift guide on there. Another business that has done a lot with all the proceeds from their Palestinian collection going to charities in Palestine is Wear the Peace. So they're a company that was founded by the son of refugees, and all of their clothing is the proceeds are distributed to charities. So they can also be found on Instagram. So they've donated $2.2 million to humanitarian causes. And as we have on here, over $1 million has been donated to Gaza from the profits from the Palestinian collections. So that is one of the organizations or one of the businesses that, to consider getting gifts or purchases from companies like that give back. There's also, sorry. There's a vegan cookbook that is only $10, and it is 28 recipes by global majority vegans and an original essay, and all the proceeds, 100% of the profits are donated between the Palestinian Children Relief Fund and the an animal rescue organization. So that's another example. This is one that I found on Instagram. So the Instagram handle is Hummus and Herbs. And the book is called Flavors of Freedom. And so that's for only $10 US. You get a bunch of recipes and something that is supporting people in Palestine as well as animals. So there are a lot of companies that do, I'm gonna stop screen sharing. There are a lot of companies that do good. Oh. Okay, there, now it'll just be me on here. Yeah, so there are a lot of companies that do good with their proceeds, and those are just a couple small examples of ones that are directly linked to Palestine. There's also an artist, I think, based out of Toronto. They go by Fetch Art, and there a lot of people have seen that artwork of they did one where there's a Dakwa dancer and a powwow dancer, and that has been stolen and reused by other people. So that's all. I bring that up also to be a caution that when you are looking for something that is that, you know, you would like to be supporting the Palestinian cause or a particular artist, make sure that that is actually their work and that they are benefiting from that work. So like we have cafes here that will have proceeds go to Palestinian organizations, but there's also a lot of people selling ones that are not helping anybody. So same with that type of artwork. Sometimes it's being stolen and the artist is not getting anything, and or someone is saying that they're giving money to charitable organizations and they're not. So it's always good to vet anything that you think is, you know, has a claim that they're supporting, to vet that, and there's always ways to trace to make sure that it is actually a legitimate organization or the artist's own work. So there are some things to be cautious of for that as well. And then also just in terms of supporting local businesses, generally, I'm always an advocate for shop local whenever you can. And so like we know World of Flags in Sudbury is a wonderful local business to support. In North Bay, as far as I know, there aren't anyone that's particularly outspoken in supporting Palestine, but there are a lot of people who do. Like one of the owners of the farm downtown, Liz Lott, has come out to some of our events and will make posts related to it and stuff. And the other benefit of local business is that you can talk to the people that you're buying from. And, you know, I personally would not have an issue with just asking someone their opinion on anything that might be a factor in whether I want to be supporting their business. So we're very lucky to have a lot of local businesses, small businesses in our area that we can support and have that opportunity to speak with the people that we are supporting, to have our dollar align with our values. Thanks.
Thank you, Joanna.
I just want to add one quick thing in relation to the images. So there is a Instagram page It's called Flyers for Palestine. We'll put the link up in our socials. They have free posters for downloads. So as long as you're crediting the artist, and you're not making any changes to the artwork without the artist's permission, all of them are completely free for download.
Thank you, Joanna and Janai. Those are all excellent ideas for how to spend your money, not just not spend your money. So I'll go back to our presentation. All right, so so the second tactic that goes into the BDS movement, and the second of the tactics we're going to consider is divestment. So divestment has been used a lot more broadly than just BDS specifically. Quite famously, like I have a few examples up on these slides. The most famous and successful divestment movement was, as far to my knowledge, was against South Africa. South African apartheid, as many of us are probably familiar with, has a lot of features in common with the legal status, like the legal limbo that Gaza and the West Bank have within Israel's kind of authority. So those are good examples to look back to and consider and learn from. Aside from South Africa, a lot of people have tried the same tactics on climate issues. Most famously, most famously in Canada, fossil free, which is on a lot of university campuses. And the idea behind divestment is to make a place unattractive for other people to invest in, because there's just so little supply of money that is headed there in the first place, and that will just lower stock prices across the board, and it will affect everything else. It'll affect and not just stock prices, but also the infrastructure projects in a place like that, because infrastructure projects always have huge private investors that are participating in them. Getting into more of the nitty-gritty specifics for how divestment is targeting Israel. The college encampments were a very flashy example of a movement in North America that and Europe that was aimed at forcing the issue of divestment. So the demands of most of the college encampments were something like, first, disclosing whether or not the university they're a part of was invested in Israeli companies, and what Israeli companies. And then once that disclosure was done, then trying to just get the universities to take all that money out of Israel. So these kinds of moves have not been the most successful on university campuses, with some exceptions that I'll get to in a moment. The other very sort of huge terrain that I think is probably underrepresented in Canada relative to the opportunity is unions. So if you're in a union and you have a pension plan with your union, you should look into whether there is some kind of democratic procedure by which union members get a say in the investment of their pension plans. And there's lots of work ongoing in this space, but it has not always been the most flashy issue. But pension plans have a lot of money, both union pension plans and, the Canada pension plan is another example of a huge pot of money. And so it's really worth pursuing these aims. And I have on this slide a group that is working on the Ontario Teachers Pension Plan for any teachers in the audience or former teachers. Good. So staying in Canada for a little bit longer, Scotiabank is obviously a huge institutional investor. They've got, I think, literally trillions of dollars that is invested somewhere, and quite famously, they were the largest investor in a Israeli military company called Elbit Systems at the start of the genocide, back in October 2023. And people have tried to pressure them to divest through various means, including lots of stuff happening around the various things that Scotiabank sponsors in order to appear like a contributing citizen to our country, most notably the Giller Prize, which is a major prize for writers in Canada, which many people have boycotted. I think we're going on 2 years now of boycotts of the Giller Prize, and that was over Scotiabank's interest in Elbit Systems. So here's a few divestment successes just to whet our appetites. So the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades is a union in both Canada and the United States. And they've decided to divest their pension fund from businesses involved in the destruction of Gaza. And that's their wording. And it's, I think, one of the more encouraging examples I've seen of from this angle. And that is if you know a lot about the union movement, that may not come as a huge surprise, because from what I understand, they're one of the most left-wing unions in North America. But they're still a large union, and they have shifted a large pot of money away from the destruction of Gaza, we can hope. So that's worth mentioning. The Trinity College Dublin who had a student encampment for 5 days, and at the end of 5 days, they completely conceded to all the students' demands there. And in other parts of the world, those concessions to demands have not been always so clear-cut. Some of them are rather mealy-mouthed, like in Ontario, UOIT, or I forget what, you know what it's called now? Oh, Ontario Tech University, something like that. They had like some mealy-mouthed promise to look into divestment or something like that, which ended the encampment there. But in the case of Trinity College Dublin, it was a very clear-cut commitment to divest, which makes sense given the Ireland's historical solidarity with Palestine. In the United States, Portland, Maine, vote to cut ties with all businesses that are doing business with the Israeli state, which is, I imagine, a more comprehensive commitment than they thought it was when they took it on. But it's an impressive commitment. I wish them well in pursuing that. All right, and here's a few things to look to on the horizon and related to this. These have not there is a movement to end the Canada pension plan's political neutrality. So in the 90s, when the Canada pension plan was created, it was created to be sort of entirely profit focused in a way that prevents it from considering things like divestment, and that's unfortunate in a world where actually we do need to divest from some things. So that's a political aim that I think we should really be pursuing, which some people are pursuing in Canada. I mentioned the Ontario Teachers Pension Plan earlier. So from what I understand, the main organization pushing forward lobbying of the Ontario Teachers Pension Plan, both through teachers who are with the Ontario Teachers Pension Plan and with just the rest of us, is World Beyond War. So that's a group to look into in terms of investing large sums of money, bigger than any of us can personally imagine, from Israel. And in compelling news that's maybe not completely related to the pressure on Scotiabank, but maybe related to just the tanking Israeli economy, is that Scotiabank has cut its shares in Elbit Systems by 70% from its peak in 2023. So that's excellent progress. We'd like to see it go to 100%, but 70% is a good start for dumping shares of evil companies. All right. So I mentioned divestment when we were talking. Sorry, I mentioned South Africa when we were talking about divestment, and it also applies to sanctions. That's really an example that lights the way here for what we can do. There was a great deal of sanctions placed on South Africa in the last 5-10 years of its existence, as the state slowly became more unstable and more unhinged, towards the end. Hopefully an example that will follow. Anyways, but we can pursue basically the same tactic with respect to Israel. BDS seeks a suite of sanctions that are similar in some ways to the sanctions that were pursued against South Africa. On here, I've got sanctions that the NDP has endorsed, which is ending all trade and economic interchange with illegal settlements, which would be in the West Bank, for the most part for now, and then suspending the bilateral trade. Sorry, you guys are covering stuff. All right. Suspending the bilateral trade of all arms and related materials with the State of Israel, which is similar to what the Trudeau government has half implemented, and to the arms trade with Israel, but the NDP has promised to actually complete the task of ending trade with Israel of arms and military supplies. All right. So there's a sort of consensus set of sanctions that has been put forward by like partially by BDS. I think BDS would consider this a starting point, but it's being pursued by Canadian organizations like Canadians for Justice and Peace in the Middle East, and those sort of consensus sanctions are suspending the military trade, which we were just talking about, imposing sanctions on Israeli officials. So like we already know that if Netanyahu came to Canada, allegedly we would arrest him and on behalf of the International Court of Justice, but that doesn't stop him from opening a bank account in Canada if he so chooses. And so really we should be imposing sanctions on as many Israeli government officials as practical and possible, because lots of Israelis are working with Canada, and last time that we were talking in person, we were hearing about IDF students attending local universities in North Bay, and honestly, even soldiers that are involved in genocide maybe shouldn't have bank accounts in Canada that work. And then our third demand that the Canadians for Justice and Peace in the Middle East has put forward is banning trade with entities related to settlements, which is again sort of part of the NDP platform now, which is a good step. One thing which BDS has made clear, generally speaking, but which I haven't found any evidence of it being pursued in Canada, is the end of free trade agreements with Israel. Canada signed a free trade agreement with Israel in the 90s. Actually, prior to the free trade agreement with Israel, Canada wasn't providing any military aid or equipment to Israel. And they actually restarted the arms trade with Israel as like a sweetener to the deal when they were arranging that free trade agreement. Fun fact. When we talk about suspending military trade with Israel, we're just talking about returning to the more sane foreign policy towards Israel of 1989, apparently. So yeah, that's sort of some sanctions demands, and I've tried to be optimistic throughout and focus on examples of successes, and I'm going to continue that here. Spain has refused basically to dock any ships that they believe to have military equipment bound for Israel at their ports. And if you know anything about geography, that means if you're coming from the east coast of the United States on a boat and you're coming to Israel, going to Israel, you are probably going to have to either dock in Morocco, or you're going to have to go around Africa and take the Suez Canal on your way to Israel. So it is a impediment to the flow of goods to Israel, and we can hope that maybe that will escalate as more countries, especially in the Mediterranean Sea, hopefully get more serious about is the Israeli genocide. One interesting detail about the movements in Spain is that before it was a policy of the Spanish government, it was sort of an informal, informally enforced by the longshoremen's unions in Spain. Many of them would refuse to serve vessels that were docking at those ports that were destined for Israel, and that's a very like sort of encouraging example, and also probably an example that we could learn a thing or two from as far as pursuing similar aims in North America. And not to say that longshoremen in the United States haven't done some extremely good things on that front already, but Spain has seen more success on that front. And to my knowledge, Canada has sanctioned some settlers and, of course, prevented new trade in some classes of military equipment. So that's a start as well. But yeah. So you know, before the start of this genocide, the BDS movement existed, and they were probably mostly talking about Sabra hummus and boycotts and things like that, and those are still important and still useful steps. But the BDS movement is much bigger than that, and it's gotten much bigger than that, and like it's been able to pursue more ambitious goals as the genocide in Gaza has unfolded. So it's something, you know, the larger the problems we face, the more there's been some attempt to address them. So that's, you know, some encouraging signs. All right. So after I'll open the floor to questions, and then after that, I have a clip from a video about where a Palestinian representative of BDS talks about the movement in his own words, and I'll show that soon. But first, I want to open the floor to questions. Does anyone have something they'd like to ask? Yes, Anand.
Are there any apps that you can use to identify which products are associated with the apartheid state of Israel that you can download on your phone?
Yes, I will probably try to put the name of that app in the chat, and it'll definitely be in our post-event materials. But the BDS movement recently partnered with a app in order to make it easier for people to like recognize and follow the boycott. All right, I'm putting the name of the app in the chat right now. Boycott app. And if you don't write that down right now, I'm sure it'll be in the post-event materials that we put up. But worth knowing about. It's a handy little thing that'll to sort of make it more convenient to obey those boycotts. That was an excellent question. Are there any other questions? Howard.
Yeah, the Sabra group is related to or the Sabra hummus is related to the Strauss Group, and apparently they've sold 50% of their shares. They don't own 50% anymore.
Okay. That's so another success of the boycott. I think I saw that well, so SodaStream is still an Israeli company, and I don't think that they're completely their hands are completely washed of involvement in the West Bank, but I believe I saw that they were possibly closing some of their operations in the West Bank as well. And I think maybe Puma was not going to renew its sponsorship of the Football Association of Israel, which was part of how Puma ended up on the BDS list. I don't think those boycotts have been ended, but they're at least indications that things are changing on both those fronts. So are on the one you mentioned and also those two I just mentioned. So this is all in motion, and that's partially why it's good to have the Boycott app, or at least check the BDS website on a semi-frequent basis to see how things have changed, and also maybe to learn something approaching good news, which we don't always get. Is there any other questions? All right, awesome. Any questions from the room? All right, I'm gonna play a video now just so you guys can hear someone talking about boycott, divest, sanctions, like a Palestinian talking about boycott, divest, sanctions in their own voice. That video is part of like a 2-hour conversation, which we will not be obviously listening to all the way. It's and it's not just BDS people in the conversation. There's a whole bunch of people, and the link for that will be available in the materials afterwards. But for now, I'll just show you the essentials. All right. This is from an interview with Haymarket Books. It's from relatively early in the genocide, I think, like early 2024, I think. So forgive it if some of the details are dated. Obviously, it's a fast-moving situation, but we're going to hear from Omar Barghouti about the BDS movement. All right.
To you, I think in a moment like now where people are really desperate for answers about what to do, it can be very isolating to be by yourself watching the news right now. The BDS movement, as I said earlier, I think has been the most successful challenge to Israeli apartheid in its entire existence. I'm hoping that you can give people a little context for how it emerged and exactly why it's been so successful.
Thanks a lot, Jason, for this. Well, I think most people now are asking, how do we stop the genocide? That's the most urgent item. So to some, it might seem, why would we even discuss boycotts and divestment? And how is that even remotely possible now? Shouldn't we just all be in the streets demonstrating and doing sit-ins and occupations as JBB has been leading and other groups across the world? Absolutely. Now is the time to do everything possible to stop the genocide, and the US is not a supporter of this genocide. Palestinian civil society views the US as a full partner in genocide, funding, leading, arming, justifying, protecting, defending from accountability, global accountability. at the United Nations. Just today, there was a vote at the UN on UNRWA, on the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees, and it was 164 supporting UNRWA against 4 the US, Israel, and a couple of other countries. So that shows how the US is getting more isolated worldwide. In this picture, BDS gives the tools to not just vent anger now, not just express feelings and slogans today, which is extremely important, but plant the seeds of change for tomorrow as well, for the day after, so to speak. When we all this collective movement, we build enough power to force a ceasefire, to force humanitarian into Gaza, lifting the siege, and we stop the genocide, the day after, we will exact accountability. It will come, as we've always done with 75 years of Israel's regime of settler colonialism and apartheid. We've always said they have to pay a price in this. And the price we make them pay is through cutting the links of complicity, state, corporate, institutional complicity. And that's where BDS comes in. So everyone who's demonstrating in the streets, participating in those wonderful, extremely inspiring sit-ins and occupations, especially the ones led by JVP, then they come back and say, well, what am I doing longer term? Well, everyone is a member of some entity, some association, some union, some organization, some community where they can have an influence. And the first question they need to ask is, are we doing harm? Because solidarity begins with ending complicity. Before we can do solidarity, we've got to make sure we're not doing harm. Well, US taxpayers are doing harm by paying taxes to the state, to the country, to the government, but you can hardly do anything about that. You cannot stop paying taxes. Some people have, but the absolute majority won't. But you can offset the harm done with your tax money that's going in arms and missiles that are killing our children in Gaza. You can offset that harm by ending the complicity within your community, your organization. That's why BDS, which was started in 2005, gave a real way for people to express solidarity in a very, very effective way, to build people power. So in 2005, the absolute majority of Palestinian society came together, established the BDS movement, which is inspired by the South African anti-apartheid movement and the US civil rights movement, as well as many other struggles around the world. Obviously, it's a non-violent movement that abides by international law, universal principles of human rights. It calls for ending the occupation, ending the system of apartheid, and the rights of refugees. The absolute majority of Palestinians, the absolute majority in Gaza are refugees. So the right of return for refugees is the most important right that the BDS works on. That's why it has established a consensus among Palestinians, regardless of what their political views on the solution. One state, two states, democratic state. No matter what, we don't discuss solutions in the BDS movement. Whatever solution Palestinians opt for have to be built on ending occupation, ending apartheid, and the right of return. Since its inception, BDS has taken a very clear stance against all forms of racism. So it is in line with the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, opposes all forms of racism and discrimination, including Islamophobia, anti-Black racism, anti-Semitism, sexism, and so on and so forth. This has formed a basis for BDS to grow universally, working with trade unions, social justice, racial justice, gender justice, queer movements, climate justice movements across the world, building people power to challenge the powers that be and to end those relations of complicity with states, with corporations and institutions as the most effective way to end Israel's regime, to dismantle Israel's regime of settler colonialism and apartheid. It cannot continue oppressing us and killing us and committing genocide against us without those links of complicity. That's why it is just a no-brainer. That's what you've got to do. The first step of solidarity is end complicity. Do no harm.
So that was Omar Barghouti describing in his own words the sort of aims and the nature of the BDS movement and its history. they put his book up on screen during all that, which you can since the YouTube video will be up, you can go look into that a little bit more if you're curious about that. But that's what I wanted to end with today. I think that's I'm sorry, no closing statements. Okay. So thank you everybody who showed up either in person or online. And you know, think about this next time that you're buying hummus or anything else, you know. And there's so many places where we're going to come into contact with these goods. Actually, you know what I didn't say out loud in the boycott section is that the BDS movement supports a full boycott of Israeli produce because it's not clear what Israeli produce comes from the land that is called the State of Israel and what comes from the occupied West Bank. So that's another thing to keep in mind. But now I'm going on too long, and so just you know, keep this in mind and think about which organizations you might have some pull with, whether it's through a union or something else. Yeah. Thank you everybody for showing up.
Oh, some people have their hands, oh, they're clapping.
Yeah.
I do a little icon. Yeah. Very useful.